Wonderful. Here we go. So yeah, I thought I must have did GDPR this morning. Although my voice last out, I didn't do anything. But I thought instead, you know what? I thought most of you in the room know me, so I thought I'd do a short timeline of me because there's probably a few things about me that you don't know. Um, so if my slides would move on, that would be really good. The early years. Let's start at the beginning. This is me with my mum and my dad. My dad was far better looking than any of his sons, so he didn't pass that gene on to us. But anyway, there was my mum, my dad, and that's me in the middle, looking suitably fed up because we're standing out in the middle of Dartmoor on that occasion, and that is snow on the ground. And yes, I am old enough, but back then all the photographs were in black and white. And just to prove it, here's me with in my coat, which I hated, with my new wheelbarrow, with my two brothers, Roger and Roy. And as you can see, my brothers are much older than me. In fact, Roy's 17 years older than me, which meant that when I was young, we didn't get on at all because I was that young brat who he really didn't want to know. Um, but anyway, that coat I hated. My mum bought it for me. She thought it was lovely. I thought it was horrible. And so one day when we had a old style real fire at home, and we had somebody in sweeping the chimney, and I went in the room even though I was told not to, and oh, I tripped, um, and somehow my coat got all covered in soot, and so I had to be thrown away, and my mum was devastated, but I wasn't. But anyway, that's and so we move on from there, and I went to university. I went to Middlesex University in London. When I went, it was a polytechnic. By the time I left, it had been a university. See, I changed everything. And I went there to study natural physics. So if you want to know about volcanoes and the earthquakes and things, then I'm your man. Because at the time I planned to be a physics teacher, but it didn't quite work out because we had a careers fair in the final year of university, and I discovered that people working in IT earned far more than physics teachers did, so I stopped teaching. I went into IT instead. Um, and my first employment actually was with the DHSS. And if you got one of these in your wallet, a national insurance number card, I worked on the team that first introduced and produced those. So that was a first. And my desk was not unlike this at the time because we didn't have screens. We had to type everything. It went into a machine. It produced it all through, and the next day you found out what you'd written had actually worked or not. So it was a very inefficient way of coding, but that's what we did back then. Um, but then I went to work for a proper IT company. I went to work for Welcome Software. I worked there for a good, I don't know, 9 years, I think, which was an awful long time to work somewhere in IT at the time. But whilst I was working there, I went out to Zimbabwe to open our office in South Africa because at the time South Africa was judged too dangerous to actually be in. So I was sort of commuting between Zimbabwe and South Africa to set up the office because Zimbabwe back then was by far the safer country to be in. I'm not so sure that would be true now, but I absolutely love Zimbabwe. It was fantastic. And I spent a whole 6 months out there, which was brilliant. Went on lots of safaris, saw lots of wildlife, and yeah, it was great experience. And then I came back and I met this guy, Colin Dean, who got me into the world of document management. In fact, I was one of the first four people to bring document management to electronic document management, I should say, to the UK, and I could see that was the future. So I decided to go it alone, and teamed up with four other independent consultants, and we formed what was the Document Management Roadshow. And Document Management Roadshow we ran for several years, and it was nuts because we did something like each year we did 7 or 8 cities in 1 week, going from one place to another. We were in like a semi coach. We had a truck that was taking all the stands and everything, all the stand and production stuff going ahead of us. Um, and we went everywhere. And I always remember when we went to Cardiff, and I mean, we got good audiences in most places, but Cardiff, the room was packed to standing. And I remember saying to somebody afterwards, one of the guys at the venue afterwards, I said, why is there so much interest in electronic document management in Cardiff? And he said, there isn't. He said, you're just one of the few people to ever bring a conference here, so all the business people have come along. So it just goes to show that, sometimes it's worth breaking out into something different so that you you attract some interest. One of my clients, though, whilst I was doing document management, was a motorsports team. And so this is me in a Formula Renault car in Spain. Um, had to be in Spain because in the UK you had to have a racing license to drive one of these. In Spain, they didn't care if you had a pulse, you could drive one. And so I had the experience of driving one of these, and it was absolutely thrilling experience. I'll always remember it. The experience of doing over 100 miles an hour with your bum 2 inches off the ground is something that you just don't forget, really. Um, and I thought I did really well because I went around in something like a minute and 10 seconds. Um, and then a professional driver went round in like 54 seconds. And I was like, okay, and maybe I'm not cut out to do motorsport then. And if anybody who's met me recently would know there's no way to do motorsport now. I wouldn't even be able to fit into the bloody seat, let alone actually drive the thing. So um, that's me. And then to come to 2005, which was my annus horribilis, my worst year in my life, because on the 1st of April 2005, and she had a real sense of humour, so I'm sure she picked the date. Um, my partner, Ingmar, who was Spanish, passed away. And it was a real shame that she went so early. Um, yeah, she's an incredibly intelligent woman. She could speak 7 languages fluently. And yeah, sadly, life took her too early. But anyway, she went on the 1st of April. And then the 7th of July, which most people remember for the London bombings in 2005, I remember for a different reason because I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a form of cancer, and I still have it. It's a lifetime penalty. But I remember my consultant at the time saying, "You're lucky," and I'm like, "Believe me, if you were sitting where I am right now, I don't feel that lucky." But it is true, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the better cancers to have because, as you can see, sort of 20 years later, I am still here. Even at the time, I was told that if I hadn't gone and seen the doctor that day, um, I would probably have only had 3 months to live. So it does show that you get a big lump like that on your neck, and it's not mumps, and get it looked at and get it taken away. But whilst I was in hospital, a doctor mentioned Martians. Or I thought he said Martians, but he didn't actually say Martians. He said Marfans. And Marfans is a genetic syndrome, which means your connective tissue is very slow to regenerate and it's weak. So as I'm walking, I'm gradually wearing out the connective tissue in my joints faster than the body can rebuild it. Which is why I walk with a frame and try and take the pressure off my joints. But what they didn't tell me was that it can also affect the blood vessels in your brain. Um, and so in April 2014, I was going out to see a friend one night and crossing a busy road and collapsed in the middle of the road. And in fact, the lorry driver who saw me collapse said he thought he'd just watched me die because I went down so quickly and so dramatically because 4 blood vessels had burst on one side of my brain. And I didn't believe in doing his behalf because as I fell, I smacked the other side of my head on the curb and had a bleed on that side of my brain as well. So I ended up in hospital. This is me in hospital in 2014. Um, I couldn't really do anything. Couldn't really move much from the chest downwards. Certainly couldn't feel anything. Um, couldn't really coordinate to eat. I could still speak. I could still think. It's bad news for some people, but that was me. But I remember this consultant, and to this day, I still do not know if she did it deliberately, but I suspect she did. She came and sat on the end of my bed at sort of 10:30 one night, and she said, "Well, I'm ever so sorry, Mr. Budden, but this is as good as it gets." Um, and my response to that was like, "Fuck it is." Um, and 10 days after that, albeit with a frame, I was walking around the ward, albeit very slowly, but I was walking around the ward, even though they said I wouldn't be able to, so stuff them. Um, but it did also give me time to think. And I have to be honest, up to that point, I had lived to work. I no longer live to work, I now work to live. And the change in mindset is dramatic. And as part of that, I came up with something called the 48-hour rule. Now, I don't actually believe I invented this, but everyone I speak to say they've never heard it before, so maybe I did. So I'm claiming it. Hey, because no one else is claiming it, I'll have it. And it is going to be in my new book. Um, but the 48-hour rule is basically, from that day on, I've only ever worried about things that are going to happen in the next 48 hours. Don't worry about things I've done, because you've done them. So good or bad, you've done them. There's no point worrying about them. Can't change them, so don't worry about it. Anything more than 40 hours away, especially in today's hectic, crazy world, might well never happen anyway. So don't worry about that either. So only worry about the next 48 hours. As a result of that, what did that bring about? It brought about this state where I have less stress, so I sleep better. And if you sleep better, you make better decisions, so you have less stress. Um, and it creates what I call a virtuous circle. Um, it just I can say hand on heart that despite COVID, despite running a district council through COVID, despite all the other things that I've had to do, despite running my business, since I made that decision in 2014, I've never had one single sleepless night. And so it really does make a difference. And I also decided I was going to write a book. So I wrote a book called GDPR Made Simple, which is available on Amazon. It's still the cheapest GDPR book on Amazon. It still sells, still no longer makes me anything sensible in royalties, which is why I've started writing the second book. Um, but I also, as part of sort of recovery, I wanted to, having spent that long, I spent 17 weeks in hospital. I found I wanted to give something back to society. So I started getting involved in local government. So I became a parish councillor, became chair of our parish council. In fact, I'm still chair of our parish council. But then I got involved with the district council and I got elected chairman of the district council. And I'm the only person in the 50-year history as a council to have been elected chairman for 2 years consecutively by the other members of the council. So I'm really, really proud of that. And it did have some nice things with it as well, as I got invited to a garden party at Buckingham Palace, which was absolutely fantastic. And a lot of people don't know this, but it's an odd quirk of the law that you're only allowed to attend one garden party in your life. So having attended a garden party, that's it. You're not allowed to attend again. The idea is that it spreads that opportunity out to more and more people. But it was great. We went along to the Buckingham Palace. I met Prince Charles as he was then, or King Charles as he is now. Um, it's really interesting with his flunkies behind him, obviously giving him a little note of who you are and what you do, because he hasn't got a damn clue. But it was fun. Another thing I did as chair as well, I went behind the Flying Scotsman, which was brilliant. Really brilliant fun day, because outside of work, one of my interests is anything powered by steam, really. So being behind the Flying Scotsman for 20 odd miles was brilliant. And it also meant I met this guy. This guy you might recognize. I'm a big Holby City fan. Um, and this guy was Sasha Levy in Holby City. And I met him at a event where we were both there. He was a patron of one of the charities that was there. And according to my daughter, who was also with me, it's the only time she's ever known me lost for words. Because I was just gobsmacked that this guy who I idolized almost was like there. And he was a brilliant guy, absolute fun. My daughter will never forgive me because the Duchess of Wessex, who's now the Duchess of Edinburgh, was also there. I didn't give a toss about meeting her. I was over the moon that I'd met Sasha Levy. So that was, uh, I mean, I did meet her as well. But if anybody asked me what happened on that day, I met Sasha Levy. Sort of the fact that I met the Duchess of Wessex. And this is me with my daughter and two famous athletes. Opening our new local leisure centre. So it was another great achievement for me whilst I was chairman. So I'm got those things that locally I'm proud of. And I couldn't do it on my own. I've got a couple of mentors as well. One, almost all you would know, is Brad Burton, who was with 1N and 4N for a long, long time. I'm a big friend of Brad's, and yeah, he's still a mentor in my life. But for writing my book, I also got to know this lady who's Shah Wasman, for those that don't know her. And she's a published author. She's published 4 business books. She was great help getting my book out. And in fact, I'm working with her now on getting my second book out, which is out in October. And it's going to be called A Lifetime of Moments, which is basically going to be my story with a lot of business tips thrown in. So why do I do it?
Got 2 minutes, Keith. All right, mate. 2 minutes.
Yeah, brilliant. Why do I do it? Do it for my family. So this is my daughter Michelle, and my two lovely grandchildren, Tristan and Leah. As some of you know, unfortunately, Leah and Tristan are currently in foster care, but we're hoping that before the end of this year they'll be back home with their mum, which would be fantastic. And also need to talk a bit about the team because nobody can do it by themselves. It's my business partner Jane. Jane and I have been in business together for 20 years now, and as I tell her often, it's get less time for murder. But anyway, she puts up with me, and she's my rock. And she's my feet on the ground because she always says to me her worst fear is when she comes in to see me on a Monday morning, and the first thing I say to her is, Jane, I've been thinking, because that's always really bad news as far as she's concerned, because it means I've come up with some wacky idea. And also our office dog Lucy, because nothing happens if Lucy doesn't approve of it. Because Lucy is a sprocker. She's nutty as a box of frogs, but I love her to bits. And yeah, she's there. And somebody sent me this T-shirt, which I thought was not a bad mantra. Actually, it's not me wearing it, by the way. That's somebody else. But um, if Budden can't fix it, we're all screwed. And I like that. I'll go along with that. And hey, you have to wear a silly hat. So this is as good as it gets. I don't think so. And that's a very quick run through of my life. So please do buy my book when it's out in October, A Lifetime of Moments. And if anybody's got any questions in 60 seconds or so, I will gladly take them.